and welcome to Cinema Spectator, a show where an expert and a casual movie fan watch movies in the cinematic canon. Today's film is Parasite, directed by Bong Joon Ho, starring Kang Ho Song and Woo Sik Choi, although, to be honest, it's kind of an ensemble cast, and there's a lot of names that, we'd be here all day if I named them all, so I just chose two. But Isaac, how are you doing?
I'm so disappointed that this movie didn't have a chest buster in it, but you can't complain. I'm good. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. I'm excited to talk about it, excited to wrap up Korean Cinema Month and move into horror, which was a very fun month for me. I've always considered myself like just too scared for horror movies, but there's a classy side of it. I'm excited to get into it. Maybe we'll watch some trashy stuff. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm excited to close out this month. I have a lot of thoughts on Korean cinema for casuals, and I'm ready to get into it. How about you, Cameron? How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy as always. It's been kind of a crazy time, crazy last couple of weeks, but and it's going to be a crazy October too. But I did want to mention that we have something fun planned coming up. We'll do sort of more of an in-depth post on it on our Patreon, but we are going to host kind of a community day in October. We're going to decide when it's going to be, but basically what we're planning on doing is we're planning on watching a movie on Amazon, and there's a watch together feature, and we're all going to jump in a Discord call and hang out and talk and have fun during the movie, and it should be a good time. And I think Horror Movie Month is a good place to do it because sometimes it's actually horror movies are always best when you watch them with friends, to be honest.
True.
Yeah, so I think it'll be a fun time. I'm looking forward to it. But like I said, keep an eye on the Patreon for more information about that. And we're going to officially start a Discord server, pretty soon, and it'll be I think it'll be a good time. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think having Discord will be fun for the community to submit questions and just communicate with each other and talk about the most recent episode. I'm excited for it. We'll probably sort of feel it out. I feel like Discord is an easier platform to communicate than Patreon. It's not like I use the Patreon app to message my friends or anything like that.
Yeah.
What's that sound, Cameron?
I know there's there's something going off outside or something. I don't know.
It's
like
okay.
I'm not high-pitched squeal.
I'm not even gonna judge. I left my window open. It is like so hot. It's like 7:00. Why is it hot in this house? I have no idea. I was complaining to you before we started recording, and I was like, you know what? Forget it. Audio quality out the window because I'm dying. If I didn't have any ventilation, I would definitely just be a melted pile of bones by the end of this episode. So
I think it might be someone's car, like an Amazon truck or something. Like,
oh,
it sounds like brakes that are very worn down to me. But yeah, stop interrupting my podcast, okay?
Yeah,
my window's not even open, so it's very loud.
Wow.
Apparently.
Yeah, that's surprising. Jeffrey Bezos is just working those guys so hard they don't have time to switch the brakes, So they're just like, yeah, just grind on the metal for a while. You don't need disc pads or whatever.
I feel like they probably sell those on Amazon, don't they? They sell brake pads, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. Where were we? Oh yeah, that event and the Discord thing. Yeah, so we're excited to be launching it. It's going to be fun just to be able to communicate with you guys directly. I guarantee you, because there's notifications that we'll be messaging on there. More on that. Patreon server is probably going to be open to the public, right, Cameron?
Yeah.
You'll probably have to go through our Patreon page to join. That's even if you're just a free listener, you can still be a part of the Patreon.
Well, we can make like a Twitter announcement, or we'll try to make it accessible, because I do want to have it to be kind of a hub for the community, and kind of make it more general audiences. We might have areas where it's patron only or whatever, but I think for the most part I'd like to keep it open because it's fun, and we can post memes, we can put we can put movie recommendations. Tim Smith can show us his new Blu-rays box sets that he always gets. It'll be a good time.
The memes will be heavy. I have no doubt that we'll
for
have
sure.
some good ones for you guys. Well, Cameron, usually this is the part of the show where I ask you for a hot take about movies. And in honor of Parasite, I'm going to ask you, Cameron, what is the best mystic rock in film history? Give it to me.
Yeah. So when you said that, my first thought was actually Breaking Bad. I know you haven't seen it, but there's a sequence where Hank keeps mail ordering rocks to his house, and he's very offended when his wife calls them rocks because they're minerals, Marie. And it's very funny. But I'm trying to think. I think honestly, probably the stone or the obelisk or whatever it's called in 2001 is a great iconic rock. I think there's also rock bashing in skulls in that movie too, right? Is that am I incorrect in that?
Well, I've only seen it once for the show. I think sure.
In the beginning they hit him with the hammer, and then I think there's a rock smash at one point. I could be wrong though, because I thought there was a rock smash in Lord of the Rings in Return of the King. Remember when? But it's not. It's he just chokes him to death. I had kind of a vague idea that there was someone getting their head smashed in by a rock. Now, kind of like the hammer question that you posed a couple weeks ago, I'm not entirely sure that I can remember too many movies where like someone gets their head bashed in with a rock. I can think of people getting their head bashed in with a bowling pin, people getting their head bashed in with, other large objects, but rocks. I would say rocks are kind of rare in movies to get your head bashed in by. Well, I'd like to see more rock bashing.
I'm not saying necessarily rock as a weapon, right? It's what is the mystic rock? I know that you're just thinking in context of Parasite. I think there are a ton of rocks that are popular in films. But the one thing that I was thinking about when I was getting ready to ask you this question and my own personal take on it is there's so many films that have like tiny little like gem rocks that like glow.
That's true.
Like from Avengers with the stone, like the Infinity Stones and whatnot. It's just like, I don't know, some rock that's glowing, and therefore it's like, ooh, it's just got some ability. We don't know why, right?
See, I always kind of hate that.
No. I agree, but as I was thinking about it, I was like, are there any cool glowing mystic rocks that like I love in films? And the one rock that glows that has some sort of mystic ability with it that I love is from Temple of Doom. There's something iconic about those. Like, they're very round. They're almost like little dinosaur eggs that are glowing, and I was like, oh, that's such a cool glowing rock. And it's also not like it lets you punch through skyscrapers or anything. It's like, it's very unclear what exactly they do. Maybe, kind of similar to in Parasite, where it's sort of like this object that carries some sort of omen with it, right? Except that rock isn't like worshipped per se in Parasite, but I gotta say the Temple of Doom rock, that's my rock of choice. Cameron, thanks for giving your hot take. This is again Cinema Spectator. You can support us at patreon.com/ECFS Productions. Throw a couple dollars our way, get your question read on the air. You'll especially get it read on the air because none of our patrons write in. Yes, I checked, patrons. I know that you think we don't check, but I check, okay? You guys don't write in questions, so we just said, I think it's like the $5 level or something. You can have your questions written in. You can vote on shows that we do for the exclusive commentary track, which is just at the $1 a month level. Sometimes you can get a free episode as well. If we decide that the commentary track is boring, we like to give a free episode to you here and there. If you can't support us with dollars, we get it. You can just give us a rating on iTunes, tell friends and family. That's how the show grows. Cameron, it's time to talk about Parasite. And also, we're getting close to the end of the month here. We got to figure out one last Korean film for our Patreons. Do you want to talk about that first before we get into the movie?
Yeah, well, we are going to watch another Bong Joon Ho movie. It's called Memories of Murder. It's a great movie, but I think that will kind of round out the month as sort of, I would say Bong Joon Ho is kind of the most influential filmmaker from Korea, both in sort of a Hollywood context, because obviously he has a lot of renown in Hollywood, especially after Parasite. But even before, he made Snowpiercer, which was a pretty big blockbuster. And yeah, and so he kind of I would say has the lead in terms of Korean movies. So we watched a couple of his movies. We watched Old Boy, and we watched Train to Busan, which is kind of the more modern take on things. So I think that'll be kind of a nice round element. I mean, honestly, we could have just done Bong Joon Ho and Park Chan Wook and kind of split it up like that.
Yeah.
But I did want to give a little bit more perspective, and I had never seen Train to Busan, so I feel like it was a good round month, in terms of picking things, from a distance.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to finish with Parasite. I think that this is a perfect closing film to be talking about Korean cinema. We've really kind of only pulled from what you've defined as like Korean cinema new wave or something, right? What was it called? Is that right?
Yeah, Korean new wave
Yeah.
or Korean new cinema. Yeah.
Which has only been in what, like the last 20 years, 20, 30 years?
Yeah.
I don't know what cinema in Korea looks like, if like there's, I guess, a historical, like very old style of Korean cinema. I don't know kind of the history with that, but it seems like they've really hit a stride in these last few years, and it's exciting to see such creativity kind of flourish. We could take this in two directions, Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
We can dive into Parasite sort of the regular way that we do on the show, where we just break down the movie, or we can go direct into like the importance of this Korean new wave thing and sort of my takeaway as a Western viewer who I consider myself like more casual, even though, you've begun to show me a lot of movies where like past 50 episodes at this point, right? I don't know. Do you want to review the movie and then get into sort of the send off of Korean Cinema Month? Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do that last, because I think that's an important topic, and we could obviously spend a ton of time on it. But I think getting into this last movie as sort of in some ways almost not a last hurrah, but in the last kind of significant Korean movie to come out in the past couple of years, and one that actually has more than just its own sphere of influence, is kind of is definitely an international success, and saw huge success over here. So I think it's important to discuss that, and then we can kind of get into maybe what our take is on Korean cinema and sort of how we see it as different from Western cinema, because that's an interesting conversation too. So let's dig into the movie first.
Yeah. Well, I'll just give my impressions off the bat. I think that this movie is an absolute joy to watch, Cameron. I was just enamored with. It feels like it definitely had. I mean, what was it? 2019, right?
Yeah. Originally, I think it came out. Oh no. Yeah, it was like Christmas 2019, I think.
Yeah, this film just has the shiny, expensive look. It is gorgeous to watch. Oh my goodness, it is just stunning. I absolutely loved just sitting there and taking in the cinematography, the colors, the settings, everything. I genuinely just found myself pulled in, and there's so much energy with this movie and where it's going. It's trying so hard to contain its excitement as the movie continues. I think that's like you can feel like the energy of the actors and the creators and the filmmakers. They're all like filming in this house, and they're like, "Oh, we're so excited for you to anticipate, like to see the explosion of drama," and you're anticipating it. It's just an exciting experience that I think genuinely it was like so important for me to watch the other movies to then see like kind of this pinnacle moment, right? And Parasite, with its critical acclaim, right, it won an Oscar, right?
It won Best Picture. Yeah, it won. I think it won a couple different Oscars. But Best Picture, Best Director, maybe one or two others.
I think that this movie, and I know that you have your opinions about how people jumped on the bandwagon with this film, but I genuinely think that this movie deserves that kind of recognition, and I also think that this is the perfect movie for people to hear about and think to themselves, wow, I wonder if I could even sit through something like that, this I had so much fun. I watched it with Jules. There's a little bit of brutality that was intense for her, and we had a very interesting conversation at the end of the film that I kind of want to dive into as we're reflecting on Korean cinema. That's kind of what's been on the front of my mind, but overall, really positive about this film. I'll just say it now. Like, if you haven't seen it, you got to. There's so many moments that I want to dive into, but this film feels almost perfect. I think that there are little things that begin to kind of irk me. I think the ending goes on for a little too long for some reason. I kept thinking that the movie was over and it kept going. And I was like, all right. Yeah. So yeah, I have like mostly high praise for this film. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. I know that's how I feel about it. How about you, Cameron? How do you feel? How many times have you seen this film, first of all? And like,
I think this is actually only my second time. I saw it originally when it came out in theaters, and actually, I think I saw an early screening of it as well with Juzo. I think I was late. This is a funny story, so I'll tell it. Okay. I was late to that screening because me and Juzo had been going to the Mill Valley Film Festival like the week leading up to this movie. And in my mind, I don't know why, but I thought that this movie was playing at the Mill Valley Film Festival. And so I drove up there, and actually the movie was showing at the Embarcadero. So I had to like rush back and, go try to find my way. So in any case, it was, obviously I ended up very much enjoying the movie. So it didn't matter that much, but I always kind of joke about this movie, and it is really a joke because I joke about this movie that people are jumping on the Bong Joon Ho bandwagon, that I'm the real Bong Joon Ho fan because I watched him way before it was cool, and that's a joke mostly at my expense because obviously this movie is excellent. Like there's no question about it, and obviously there's a reason why it came out to such praise and came out to such almost like it had this word of mouth appeal that has rarely happened in my movie going experience. I think maybe like Mad Max Fury Road was another one that kind of had the same word of mouth appeal where, you knew a couple people who watched it and they kept on talking about it and kept on saying like, oh my goodness, this is the best movie ever. And like, slowly over the course of that summer, in a couple months, it turned out to be like a really important movie. And I think Parasite did the same, where there were a couple of evangelists who were very hardcore about this movie when it first came out, or when it was in its pre-release state. It was at Cannes, so like a lot of people saw it during the summer before it came out, in the winter of 2019. So it was a movie that kind of had this buzz about it beforehand, and then when it came out, more and more people that I knew who are very much casuals, who are very much, go see Marvel movies once a year, go see the new, Mission Impossible maybe. And then everybody was talking about Parasite. Even people who I was really surprised would just go out to the theaters and watch a Korean movie. And in a lot of ways, this movie makes me very nostalgic for a time when there could be kind of this word of mouth success, because I'm not sure that exists necessarily now. I don't know if people are going to be more adventurous with the movies that they go to theaters with. I think that was a very interesting year in a lot of ways, 2019, because there was a ton of movies that came out that people were like excited to see, and really enjoyed, and there were some really unusual ones, and I think this one is an example of that, where I was basically the only person I knew. Me and Juzo were the only people I knew who were excited for this movie before it came out. And then after it came out, after it had this sort of sleeper, word of mouth factor, that's when people started to really, talk about it and be sort of that's why I say they jump on the bandwagon. But really, it's like it's a good story. It's a successful bandwagon. Like, I'm not upset about it. It's just funny to say. But I now what I will say is I do think it is a very, very good movie, and it's one that many of the pictures and sort of the moments that I have in my mind have completely stuck with me. And it's very classically Bong Joon Ho as well. But at the same time, it's not the one that I think of first when I think of his works. And it's not necessarily my favorite, although it's hard to say that because it's such a good movie, and I'm not trying to knock it in any way. Like, I don't want to denigrate it or anything. It's an excellent movie. And rewatching it again was just such a pleasure. So I don't know. I was having so much fun with the movie just by myself for the second time, laughing at some of the jokes and being very invested in the story, even though I know where it's going. And, even the moments that are very tense and how I know are going to resolve, I was just sucked in again. So that speaks to the success of the movie in a lot of ways. But like I said, not trying to knock it necessarily, but I still think for me, Mother is his sort of pinnacle as a filmmaker, as a director, in terms of what I think of when I think of his style and when I think of his just like pinpoint accuracy in a lot of ways. So that's kind of my takeaways.
Yeah, I think that this film is just inherently designed with a level of engagement that I haven't seen in a lot of movies. It basically digs its hooks into you whether you like it or not. And I watched it with Jules, who she fell asleep during Mother, which is, maybe she was just tired.
Yeah.
But this film, she was with it the whole time. And she was just like kind of overwhelmed by the amount of drama and tension that she was pulled into with it. And she even like had a moment where she filmed herself like reacting to the last scene. I don't even know why. Basically, when a movie for her kind of crosses a line, like a line of like disgust, and I think that this film has some like violence that is really played up. Like it, not only is it brutal when like some moments happen, but the first thing I noticed watching it was how much the supporting cast amplified the reaction for the audience as well. I don't want to get into the spoilers right now, but I do want to dive into them in a moment, where certain characters are, assaulted, you could say, and then the response of the other characters around that character who's hit, like they elevate that scene to like 11 with their own response. They're with you in the audience. There's something about this movie where every character in it makes you feel like you're beside them in some sort of way. I don't know like how exactly to put it, because it's confusing. You don't necessarily dislike anyone except for, I'm just going to call him the hermit, right? Really everybody else is sort of like, they're kind of endearing in some sort of way. Yeah. And so you don't really know who to root for, but you're just excited to be there, like I don't know how
that's so true. That's so true.
Yeah, I don't know how else to really put it. There's so much I want to dive into. I feel like we have to get into spoilers. This movie's too new for you to listen to the spoiler section if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
We are going to spoil it, and we're going to warn you right now from now on. we're just getting into it, go see this movie.
I will say, with that being said, I don't think you need to necessarily watch it for, what's being spoiled. Like, we're going to talk about spoilers, yes, but also it's an insanely enjoyable movie regardless. So it's not like you're going to have your time ruined or whatever. It's not like the mystery element or the spoiler element is really the important part, because that's not. I don't think it is. But I will say, just go watch it. Don't hear anything more. Just find yourself enjoying it. Unless you like spoilers, whatever. You live your life.
I will say, if you go watch it based off of our recommendation now and come back, there is going to be an interest. Like, I'm so excited to have our conversation about Korean cinema, Cameron. I have like a thesis statement I want to dive into with you. This one might go a little long. I know it's
let's do it.
It's already getting late, but I'm excited for it. All right, let's get back to the film. Let's talk about the filmmaking, Cameron. I already said it's gorgeous. It's amazing. I don't know what else to add besides this film has some of the most memorable, like, cinematography that just, I know this is a strange comparison, but there are two types of shots that are with me in this film. The first one, I think you know what it is because it just sticks with you forever. And it's the ghost scene where the kid is eating the cake. Oh my, I literally like screamed out loud when I saw it. I was like, I have never seen such incredible like visual horror, but it's also like this sense of like, that's kind of like, it's just creepy awesome. I don't know how to put it.
The fact that you also know at that point what's going to happen too. You already know that that's who it is, what the ghost is, you can anticipate the moment, and it still is terrifying. That's why it's so good. That's why it works.
Oh my goodness.
It's awesome.
And Bong Joon Ho with his dark hallways. Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, there's so much in Mother that you would like miss if you didn't watch Mother first. I think that's the other thing. I can understand your frustration with it because, first of all, the moment I saw The Rock, I was like, I know what he did with a rock in the last movie. You know what I mean? Like he's got a thing about rock violence because we were talking about it, right? That's like, I was like, yeah, instantly. I know that rock is bad news. It's jagged like a weapon. Like you just know it's going down,
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I will say about this movie is I would say it's kind of a reinterpretation in a lot of ways of several of his other movies. Not a reinterpretation, but he uses elements from some of his other movies as sort of a push in this movie. And maybe even just a callback or a reference. I think The Rock is a perfect example. But I think even just the underground, the underground basement area, with its like very dark and kind of grungy looks, as well as the tiers of sort of the majestic glass house and the the dirty basement smelling or semi basement smelling house that they live in is very reminiscent of the front and the back of the train in Snowpiercer. And so like there's several elements that he has as kind of recurring themes in this movie. I
hate to interrupt you, but like as you're talking about Snowpiercer, and it's like its focus is class, and class is heavily represented in this movie. And honestly, some of the
100%.
commentary about like wealth and class in this movie is pretty it's pretty heavy-handed. I feel like it's extremely critical
100%
of both sides, and I'm like, wow, like this is some bold statements to be saying.
Well, it's kind of interesting because you mentioned early on how there wasn't anybody that you disliked except for, the hermit. And it's kind of funny because really the rich family did nothing wrong in this movie.
Right.
Like in all cases, the rich family basically had no fault, which is kind of an interesting message because you'd think like, you'd think that there would be something more overt, or there would be something more, more. Obviously, he's talking about class. He's talking about sort of struggling, but this movie is kind of weirdly critical of
the lower class,
as well.
It's weird.
Very strange.
Yeah, but what's interesting is its critiques of the lower class are dialed in with a laser focus on almost like personal responsibility, right? There's like this, it honestly, you know what? Like, it's weird, but like my dad is a planner, right? And so the moment they start talking about planning, it's like I can hear my dad talking to me about like, are you responsible or are you not? And that's just filtered through the lens of, do you have a plan or do you not? Right.
Yeah.
And like, it's just, I was like, wow, this is kind of countercultural in a lot of ways with what it's saying. And at the same time, I was surprised with how much critical acclaim this film has, when it's sort of like, I don't know, like it also made me kind of feel a little confused in that regard, like just thinking about the social context where it's like all these rich, people in Hollywood are like, yes, this is the best movie ever.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm like,
it's true.
This is a little interesting, right? But yeah, the representation of class, I think that there's obvious callbacks to Mother with, the hermit's wife who's like taking care of him down in the basement. And really that expands, I mean, her existence and her relationship with the hermit, that's like a visual callback to Mother, I think, but there's some deep commentary resurfacing from Mother about parenting and sort of, parents sheltering their kids or maybe not caring about their kids. I felt like a lot of that came back. So it feels
being
like
poor influences and sort of having decisions that, they make thrust onto to the kids as well. It's like, yeah, totally. There's so much thematically that comes back that obviously you can just tell that he cares about it. So it's not like it's not like he's retreading old ground. I think he's exploring it with a new idea, with a new story, exploring some of the same things that he's kind of dug into in the past. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of derailed where we were going with some of the filmmaking, but I think it's a natural conversation. There's one last thing I wanted to say about the cinematography and the craftsmanship. I'm not a fan of Final Fantasy games, but one of the things that I do know is that Final Fantasy VII has these beautiful, drawn out, like wide shots where you're controlling like this little figure that's running around and these like massive landscapes or whatever. Most famously with Final Fantasy VII and its city, like on the PlayStation 1, there's such incredible artwork, and then this tiny little ugly polygon figure running around on it. But this film has those masterfully painted scenes. The one that sticks with me the most is when the family escapes the home and they're running down into like the sewer area or, where they live, and all that water's pouring. There's like, he runs down this staircase that's like going down under a bridge, and the bridge is like vividly lit with orange. And like, there's just all this color around. I was just like, wow, this is like shocking. Like, it's like shockingly, it could be screenshot and framed. Like, it's just,
much of this movie could be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's jaw dropping. So even if you're just an aspiring filmmaker and you want to sit there and observe the shots, like, you can get something out of this film. Cameron, is there anything you want to highlight with the filmmaking?
Yeah, one of the things that you may not have noticed, but is kind of important, is this film was pretty reliant on CGI, and I don't know if you knew that.
No.
And it's pretty shocking when you actually realize how much of it was CGI. But it's so well, it's almost like a David Fincher style CGI, where it's totally hidden. There's no call, there's no attention called to it. It totally serves the purpose of establishing the world, and there's no there's basically no attention placed on it. And it's the house is not a real house. The house is uh inside is a soundstage, and outside is basically all digital. So
Wow.
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to look up some of the behind the scenes, because that street that the house is on, it's just a set in the middle of nowhere, like literally.
Wow.
It's awesome. So
I'm blown away. That's ridiculous.
yeah. So this is, why I say, obviously, CGI is a tool and it can be used for good or for bad. And, this movie is a great example of hidden CGI doing amazing work and being so good that your brain doesn't even register it. So
It does bum me out just a little bit, though. Just a
that
little
the house
bit.
isn't
Like,
real.
That house has so much character to it, and
it's true.
It's almost.
But that's a success of the movie, though.
Yes, I would agree. It's almost unbelievable now that I think about how much that. Like, I really wanted that house to be a house of a friend that he was like, I need to shoot a movie in this place. Like that's like where I was kind of hoping I was going to learn some stuff about it, but wow. It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. But that is pretty surprising. The house has I don't know why this is the first thing that popped in my head, but like almost like a Narnia-esque, like Lion Witch in the Wardrobe kind of feel to it, where it's mystical. There's something about it that's like, you're like, I'm drawn to this house. There's something going on here. I don't know why. It's laid out in a way that makes you kind of want to see around each corner, but it's a house. And then when there is a huge reveal that there's something about the house that's special, you're like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it, but I also kind of knew. I don't know why I knew, but I knew there was something up. There's some sort of mystery to this place, right?
Well, the house as a setting is kind of ingenious, because there's a misdirect there, right? The house obviously is kind of a representation of both the aspirations of the the family that we're following, and sort of the almost like the cold adopted corpse of someone's like lover, or someone's like big project. It's like
right.
It's like the family who moved in after they adopted the housekeeper, and they adopted with it all this all this stuff, but it really doesn't feel like it's theirs. And and almost instantly when you go in, when the movie shows you around, she's picking up the arrows, and she says like it's a playpen now, signifying the fact that it's not really theirs. It's someone, it belongs to someone else. And it's so there is the sense of it being a character on its own, first when you right out the gate, when you get to it. But then you find out that there is something more, there is something unique about it, and there's a secret with it. There's something deeper, literally, to the house. And so that is like such a great misdirect, being both metaphor in terms of the characters, and being something that pays off as like an actual secret and an actual reveal in terms of the film. So
yeah,
it's awesome. The house is fantastic. So
I love it. Yeah, I'm blown away that it's CGI, but it's too flawlessly characterized in some ways,
Yeah.
like it is so laid out in a special way, and then they keep talking about how it was made by a designer. It almost makes you believe that it's a real house, right? And it does, right? I had no idea that it was CGI, so it's awesome. Let's get into kind of the storyline, the characters, what happens, and I think that will lead very well into our conversation to close out the month. I don't really know where to start, but with the family, the poor family first. You're introduced to them. They are definitely like they're a team, a unit of bottom feeders. It seems like they're very survivalist, but also like from the beginning, like they're trying to get free Wi-Fi, and it reminded me of myself being like a middle school kid with an iPod trying to like look for Wi-Fi around my house, because I just didn't have any. I wasn't allowed to have any Wi-Fi or something like that, right? So it's kind of relatable. You're on board with them. They're not very good at finding any sort of income, and then they come across this rock, right? That's given to the son, who it's pretty clear as soon as he introduces his sister, but like his friend, essentially his friend, right, hooks him up with a tutoring job, and then that family needs another tutor, and they need a new driver. Well, they need another.
Well, let's just say they finesse their way
Yes,
into all of them getting jobs with this rich family
without them knowing, and that's where like a lot of the tension builds. That the gig is up pretty early on. I feel like you're anticipating it all going sideways. But I think what's so awesome about this movie is it keeps you engaged, and it also, like, the gig is up at the right time. It is very methodical with the way that the family isn't caught, and also how there's enough drama and mystery around the family not being caught. Like when they started to reveal that the house had more secrets to it, like my first thought with this movie, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but my first thought is as soon as they were in the house hanging out as a family, I was like, oh, I totally know. I already see the rain. The family's coming back, and it's gonna be crazy, and I didn't realize that the movie wasn't even halfway over at that point, too. I was like, this is the end. Like, this is like this is the exciting part. And then when it's the old housekeeper, I'm like, okay, like, are we going to get like weird, like Hotline Miami animals in masks showing up, like trying to take back the house from another family that doesn't own it? Like, I was like, that'd be really interesting. And for her to then go down in the basement with her creepy laugh, and you're like, okay, so now she's the killer in the house, right? You're not quite sure. Only to find out there's like a secret bunker. You're like, what is happening? You're so like, you're so invested in the mystery of what's going to happen in the house. And then the family comes back, right? And it's like, oh, I really thought I knew what the order of like events and how it was all going to go down, but it didn't happen that way. As a matter of fact, it happened in a way that was way more exciting, way more engaging. And for that scene to end with things kind of being okay was weird too. I was like, I really expected someone to get caught, right?
Well, and the prolonged the prolonged sequence, right, where the family comes back, they have to clean up, they have to hide, they have to subdue the the two other people who are in the house who are not supposed to. Then they have, there's sort of this symphony of things happening at the same time, and all sort of ticking. It's relatable because, obviously you've boiled a bowl of ramen before, of instant noodles. You know how long that takes. It's not very long. And so there's this crunch, and then, everybody's hiding under the coffee table, and you have the family, they're going to go to bed. And so then, maybe they'll get a chance to sneak out, but no, they're going to actually stake it out in the same room as everybody's hiding. And so they have to wait till they go to sleep. And, there's this prolonged sequence of tension that works so well because you had this big reveal earlier. And then you realize, like, oh, like it's actually there's something more pressing that we need to do right now, and then even then it's buttressed by the sort of the high of the family hanging out for the first time in this house, being rambunctious, drinking together, and sort of being the the living in the house, with no reservations. And then you get this long, prolonged sequence of tension, and then after you have the devastation of the flood, what happens to their house, this sort of devastating event in their lives. So there's this nice, beautiful sandwich in the middle of this movie of excitement because they're there for the first time, tension, and then devastation. And I think that's what kind of makes that sequence work. Because, like you're saying, obviously that the family is going to come home. That they're on their way back. That something's gone wrong. Obviously, you've seen it in sitcoms a million times. You've watched. I'm sure it's like a Sweet Life of Zack and Cody episode or something. It's. That's what's going to happen. Like the teens are having a party when the parents are out, and then the parents come home and they wave the finger.
Right.
But it's so perfectly done in this format that kind of it lets you forget about the fact that you knew that was happening when there's so many other things that you didn't realize were going on. And like the rain is a great example too, because the rain you think symbolizes obviously the camping being ruined. And you can tell kind of almost immediately after they leave, the rain comes and there's this moment where they say, oh, Jessica, she's speaking with the voice of God and whatever, because there's a thunder and whatnot. And then what you realize is the rain actually doesn't represent the family coming home, but instead it represents loss. It represents the loss of their house, the loss of their belongings. And that's totally unexpected from what you thought was set up for you.
Yeah. I think that build up, that sequence, it's the pinnacle of the movie. As soon as they're home and the next morning I think that there are some incredible lines at the end of the sequence when the father and son are sleeping in that like shelter place, and he talks about plans. And the plan I always had is no plan, because then you can't be let down. Like what an incredible like way to sort of teach a lesson. And it's almost like, I don't know, there's something musical about the resolution where it's like he is where he belongs. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's almost like he wants to be there in a way, right? He never expected to be let down stuff. And then there's kind of that creeping poison about the father's smell, right? Which is inherently like inhumane, right? You're kind of upset by the fact that the family talks about the rich dad and the rich mom are like, oh yeah, like our new driver, he stinks, right? You can tell like he's just from a weird part of town, or
he smells like people who ride the subway,
right? Right. And that's just a mean comment, but it's not a crime, right? But it's a huge like burning anger that the dad has that kind of begins to not break his philosophy of no plan, but almost challenge his emotionless, like he's not emotionless, but it's like he has a new drive because of that. It's like an anger with it, right? And the conclusion with the birthday party, that's just very uncomfortable, all the way like with that moment where the son, what is his American name? His American name is so stupid. Kevin, yeah. Kevin. Yeah, Kevin's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go walk down downstairs with this rock. I don't know what he was planning to do. I don't remember. What was he planning to do down there?
I think he was probably planning to finish the job, basically.
Yeah.
Because the dad, along with the comment about there's no plan, he also says nobody knows what happened, so it didn't happen.
Right.
Which is kind of an important note to make, right? Obviously, that's not true, but it is something that kind of guides Kevin's actions after that point.
Well, it's surprised. The first thing that I was surprised by with this movie is how people can withstand rocks. Like, I didn't even know how Kevin was alive at the end, and I didn't even know how the woman was alive either after that fall down the stairs. I was like, she's gone, and then my last concussion breath. I'm like, what the?
Well,
heck?
she did. I mean, she did die from that injury, but
still, I was like just bewildered when she began to speak again. I was like, how? That's not even possible. So, never. Anyways, and
you could slowly die from brain damage. I believe that.
I guess so. I was just the conclusion, the terrible explosion of violence, and the conclusion with Jessica dying from a knife wound, and the rich father getting stabbed by the poor father, and him running and hiding into the bunker area as well. There's a lot to dissect. I don't know. I was very confused on the motivation of the father, and it really took the poor father. I was confused why he responded that way. But it also made sense, but it also it seemed pretty extreme, right? His response.
I mean, yeah.
in the midst of it all. Yeah, I think the movie has this explosive murder fest, right? And then it kind of lingers for a long time because it's like the filmmakers saying, I want you to think about the results of this moment, right? This is where I feel like the movie I think that middle tension and excitement is what has me recommending this movie. The conclusions that you can pull from the end of this film are extremely deep and I think important. But I think that the execution of the ending is overshadowed by the excitement and intensity of the house scene and the escape and all that stuff. The ending, I was like, what is even happening? I don't even know what's happening. I'm still chewing on sort of the resolution of the family being there when they shouldn't be. And then the ending was kind of there's all this violence that you expected to come earlier in the film. And all the characters are reflecting when this violence explodes, right? And then we have the results, right? Jessica dies, which I think is sort of an interesting thing that can be dissected. The father is sort of he's in this place it's wrong, but he also doesn't, it seems like he doesn't hate it, it's kind of weird. The mother, she doesn't have much to say, the poor mother. And then Kevin's conclusion, where he has some sort of brain damage, but he also has this vision of what he's gonna do, the happy ending, only to be followed by someday. That's that ending statement of someday I'll have the happy ending, right? Because I have an unprecedented plan. That's the strong statement that he puts at the end, right? There's a lot going on at the end of this movie, but what I really wanted to dive into was kind of this thesis statement about Korean movies, Cameron. But I want to give you an opportunity to kind of add your comments about the end of the movie. Maybe shine some context, because I found the ending to be intriguing, but also not as good as that middle part that I loved,
Yeah, well, I really like the end, particularly because I think the symbolism of everything that happens is actually what's like most important in that sequence. And I can understand why it would be not necessarily a letdown, but like it would be almost like inconclusive or unusually sort of lingering or something like that. I can see why. The thing that I'll point out though is there's obviously the break with the father, right? Where obviously it's set up earlier. He says he has no plan, and nothing ever goes wrong because there's no plan. And then it's the buildup of this sort of insult that's been haunting him for a while, and he's basically the only one who reacts when anyone says like, "Oh, what's the smell?" or whatever. He's the only one who kind of asks like, "Oh, do I stink? Like, is that me?" Like, and so there's this tension there, and then the overwhelming sense that he feels like he's being compared to the person who's crazy, locked in the basement, has nothing, has been leeching off of these people for years. And that's kind of the insult that drives him to kill the father, right? It's the comparison of being sort of a homeless person, or being this complete parasite on this family, and maybe even the realization that he kind of is, and then from there he becomes that person. He becomes the person in the basement typing Morse code, with the lights, being the exact same character that he was compared to, and I like that as sort of an arc for his character. I'm not sure necessarily what it means, and I think there's so much that you can pull from it. You could talk about sort of the violence, or sort of the the class conflict that's inherent in it. But I just think the symbology of him being trying to imitate someone who's higher class, then being looked down upon and being compared to someone who's a vagrant living in someone's basement who runs out and kills someone, and then becoming that person. I think that's a beautiful mirroring of that, that whole sequence. And then along with that, I like the sequence with the son as well, where he says like he couldn't stop laughing, he couldn't stop seeing the humor. There's something wrong with him where he just couldn't stop laughing about what happened. And then then I think the ending is also very important, where he obviously has this vision of becoming the people who he was trying to leech off of originally. And again, I think there's so much to be said about it, but I kind of just want to leave it up to the movie, and up to people's interpretations. I think this movie has so much symbology, especially in that last little compacted section, that I wouldn't want to get bogged down necessarily like in all of the details.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it works for me, is that it's packed with meaning. It's so dense with meaning. And that's kind of why it doesn't end and keeps not ending, is because I think there's still more to be dissected, more to be sort of chewed over. So
right.
That's kind of my take on it. I like the ending a lot. I think it works very well on a symbolic level.
The thing that really stuck with me, all the things you said, I agree with. I don't remember when the dad was compared to the basement dwelling guy. No. It wasn't direct, but
it wasn't. It was the smell, right? He has, the dad picks up the guy, because he's trying to get the keys, and he goes and he reels back because of the smell of the.
I didn't connect that. I did not connect that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like the key point. That's like the linchpin of that sequence, I would say. is like he felt like he's being compared to this person, you know,
The
who
thing
just
that-
like murdered people in front of his whole family.
Yeah, the thing that stuck with me was like the Kevin's response at the end with him saying like, "Oh, do I belong here? Is this like the place that I belong?" And he almost kind of knows that it's not. But then to see like Jessica is killed at the end by the guy in the basement, right? And she had a response to the house that was like she belonged there. Like they make they make it very clear. It's like, "Oh, you definitely belong here. Like this is like where you're like you're going to live." And she's so talented, but she's scummy with her talents, right? And then the dad gets it, and the basement dweller gets it, right? It's just interesting that those are the targets that suffer the repercussions of everything that happened. And it leads me to my thesis statement about Korean cinema, and maybe it's just limited by my knowledge, but the statement that I want to make is there are no happy endings in Korean cinema. And the reason that I understand why now more than ever with this film, because like it has so much to say, it refuses to let you have a happy ending. It even plays with the fact that it doesn't give you a happy ending in its last moments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've noticed this about all 4 of the Korean movies that we watched so far. None of them have happy endings, and I don't know if it's something to do with like the Eastern culture that they come from, but it's more important for these movies to make a statement in their last moments than it is for them to have any sort of resolution. The resolution is the wisdom, you know? And I think that that's like a very that's something that you don't find in American movies at all. And I'm really drawn to that because I think that the perspective that's given, even if I don't necessarily agree with everything that they're saying, it comes from a very wise place. And it's like the makers of these stories really spent a long time to think about the themes and what they really wanted to say. And it genuinely reminds me of a lot of the English literature that we read in high school and in college. Those books never end well. Like they never do. There's nothing good about the endings of most of the books that you read in English class, right? But it's because they're trying to say something that they want you to really wrestle with. And so I might not understand this movie Parasite all the way, but I'm definitely wrestling with some of the themes and ideas that it's brought up. And I think it's even more comparable to English literature, the way that Bong Joon Ho continues to hit on themes in all of his work, and it begins to transcend across his work in cinema, right? Like that is like a direct comparison to some of the greatest writers that you're forced to read in school, and how they're just hung on certain ideas throughout all of their work. I just think that is what is so exciting about Korean cinema, despite its, you know, its boldness, its craziness that's out there. I think that Parasite has so much to say. It is restrained compared to, I guess, maybe like we watched Mother, and that movie is really off the wall in a lot of ways. I would say that in some ways, if you're walking in expecting it, it's like I could see how maybe somebody who's so drawn to like Korean New Wave is like in love with that earlier form where it's like, oh, this is where it's at, you know, it's raw, it's out there, it's in your face, you know. But I feel like Parasite is like, we're gonna be in your face with this, you know, minus a couple moments like the banana moment, which was hilarious. Okay. But like there was like there's definitely a restraint with the absurdity in order to have like I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking of this book, but like Kite Runner has like these shocking moments, right? These traumatizing moments, right? In that book. And it has so much to say around those moments of trauma. And I feel like this book or this movie has like these intricately set up moments of trauma. There's not too many. They're there to be like used to push people into reflection and to push the audience into reflection as well. And I feel like that's some of the highest praise I can give any grouping of movies at all. I genuinely think that it's like, it's what I crave, but it's done in a way that is, for lack of a better word, foreign to me, right? But I'm glad that I've had the context and the introduction that you've put together, Cameron, to be able to like explore and kind of be reveal some of the artistry that Korean New Wave has to offer.
Yeah, well, I do want to comment about your what you said with the fact that Korean movies never have a happy ending. And I think that's true. I've only seen one movie that I could consider a happy ending, sort of. And we're not going to watch it. But I think that's true. And it speaks probably something to more to maybe the Korean people in general than maybe I can say, but I think part of it has to do with the fact that there's always in several of these movies there's a yes and or a yes but actually.
Right.
There's like something maybe that went right. There's something maybe that was successful. But there's a twist, but there's something that is so horrible packed with it. You think about Mother and about Old Boy in some sense. But both of those movies end with someone completely forgetting all of the wrong that's happened and moving on. And there's something you could say that might be considered a happy ending, but it's totally not. It's totally not a happy ending. I would say part of that is probably a product, and this is total speculation on my part. But part of it probably is a product of being so close to North Korea, being so close to in time to people who may have been in your family or may have been in people that you might have known who, were trapped in a civil war, who are now being sort of held hostage and who are, always an imminent threat as well.
Right.
And so
can we just not to derail you, but can we just talk about for a moment the like bold criticism of Kim Jong-un in this movie, like intensely, like they make him out to be a moron, and it's like a character just pops off making fun of him in this movie out of nowhere in some ways, but like, it's like, wow, they really wanted to make sure how they feel about Kim Jong-un.
And it's also interesting because it's not something thematically that comes up very often. I think it's always underneath the surface probably, but it's not really brought up that much in their movies. I mean, JSA, which is about the border between North and South Korea, obviously that's an exception, but yeah, I mean, like there is a very bold statement in this movie, and it's something that is kind of for a Westerner, you kind of get the sense of, I forgot that this is probably something daily that people think about. It's probably like imagine if there was like a split in California and, Northern California was like holding nukes against Southern California. And it was like this crazy thing. And I have family in Southern California, I know people in Southern California, and it's like, it's probably I'm sure there's this tension there. And there's something unresolved and very sad about that as well, where it's like, yes, we're free, and yes, we're not in North Korea, but we also know people there, and they're still there. They're still an imminent threat. And so I think that's probably where the narrative drive of them being bittersweet endings at the very best, or just dark and depressing endings at the worst.
Right. Yeah.
That's probably where it comes from. I don't know for sure, but that's my speculation.
Well,
as
I thought
as a
that
Westerner.
yeah, I think my point is that whether or not there's something cultural missing, I almost value like bittersweet endings or bad endings more after this month.
Yeah.
And I'm usually extremely critical on negative endings because I think that sometimes they're used in weird ways. I don't know, like they're used in ways that don't leave me hungry to like kind of chew on what the movie has to say. But what I've loved so much about Korean cinema so far is that they have so much to say. They have so much that they want to tell you, and they never like the negative ending or the bittersweet ending. It's never with a like belittling negativity towards the audience. More of a it's time to like really think about it. Like it's time for you to chew on it. And we're so excited to hear what you have to say. I don't know. Like I think that that's such a cool, it genuinely makes me feel like these movies are built for conversation in some ways. And yeah, I'm surprised there's not more like podcasting being done about Korean cinema as well. Genuinely, like I'm sure there's a lot of people that covered Parasite, but like just to kind of chew on another culture's like creativity. It's awesome. It's so much fun. And Cameron,
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. I'm excited to watch the last Patreon bonus episode. I think this director, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name.
Bong Joon Ho.
Yeah, Bong Joon Ho, he's up there for me now.
I agree.
It's hard to deny. There's definitely I think a cultural barrier that I won't feel completely like integrated in the messaging. You know, you have some there's cultural elements, there's language barrier and all that stuff, but he's still saying so much to me with all those barriers, and I think that that's so powerful, and a lot of credit to him and his ability to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. I totally agree. And first of all, I'm glad that you've enjoyed Korean Cinema Month. I've designed it so that you would enjoy it, obviously.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure that there were much worse picks that you could have thrown at me, but
there were a handful of movies in my mind that are. Well, obviously, you know, there are bad movies in every market.
Yeah.
So it's not a a knock or anything. But like there are some movies that are also just very, very dark and very disturbing. In a way that I didn't think you would necessarily enjoy. And I knew it. You know, it takes a certain person. Even me, like there's some movies that are just too depressing.
But you got to power through them for the sake of exploration, right?
But
not me. No, I will.
True.
I'll be like, nope, no way, I'm not doing it.
But I think the movies that I picked and sort of the ones that I decided to show you were an exploration of sort of how familiar yet different some of these movies are, and especially how familiar a movie like Parasite is, or how familiar a movie like Train to Busan is a great example, where it's something that you immediately understand, you immediately are gripped by. There isn't this like distance that you find with a lot of like European cinema. There isn't this like alienation from the audience. It's like you're in it, you're in the story. We want you to be right there, but also we're going to hit you with some things that are very uncomfortable, that are very dark, that are very unique. So there's a sense why I love Korean films and why I always find myself wrapped up in these stories and wrapped up in these filmmakers is because they have a sense of making the unfamiliar familiar, even for people who are, Korean, even for people who are in that, in that market, but especially for people like us who, we're not Korean, and we don't necessarily know some of the intricacies of the culture, but we are made comfortable by these movies because they speak to us in a way that is universal, and in a way that is very, very well done. Just like absurdly well done. And I don't want to compare it necessarily to any other market, because I think obviously it comes up in unique circumstances. But I think when you do sort of look at it in terms of Hollywood movies, or in terms of, we watched French films for 1 month. There is something esoteric about French films, and there is something maybe too simplistic about Hollywood movies, especially I would say nowadays probably is the case. And this is a great blend, or Korean films are a great blend of both of those things. Both the aesthetic, the wonderful mood, and je ne sais quoi, and there's the the sense that these movies are sort of outside of narrative in a lot of ways, and outside of the what is actually being told, and into sort of the metaphorical, or into the into the these sort of intangible things, these intangible themes. But then you get the narrative to back it up as well. You get the Hollywood style movie. You get the characters that are fleshed out and that are likable, that are relatable. And that's what makes it so fun and interesting. Is like it's a blending of good things from multiple different cultures that are synthesized in a way that I think is very important, and one to continue to keep an eye out for. And my challenge to people who aren't into foreign movies is like, this is a good place to start, I would say. This is a good place to get interested in these, get interested in movies that are outside your comfort zone, because really they're kind of inside your comfort zone. Like these movies are totally comfortable to watch. I think almost anybody can. Well, I mean, not in necessarily the themes or how violent or how.
I will speak for maybe a more casual. They're pretty out there. I'd say they're pretty out there.
For sure. But they're still. I mean, they're wrapped in the trappings of a film that you might have seen once.
Yeah, I would say it's nothing close to like boring out there. I'm not saying it's like some of the French films that we've watched, or like out there in the sense of like, I know we bring this up a lot, but like Monica Mana being like, it's out there because it's just it's a pain to get through. It's so boring, right? No, I think that these movies, I do believe that there are a lot of American appreciators who haven't explored, like our Hollywood appreciators who haven't explored this area, and they totally love it. I think that's clear. I want to slap a rating on this movie, Cameron, and I'm gonna try to do my best. I really wanted to give Parasite like for the casual, but I gave Mother for the casual, and I actually think that Parasite is more approachable than Mother. This one, I can't help it. I feel like it's for everyone. It's gonna be kind of in your face. If you're really just a Marvel movie watching schlub, like an absolute like Neanderthal or whatever, right? I mean, like, I feel like it might shock you a little bit, but like I really like. I think that this movie is just kinetic, exciting. It's great. Juliana gave it like what, 4 or 3.5 out of 5. Like that's what she gave it. She was like, yeah, that was pretty good. Even though she was like, I didn't like love every moment of it, but she was drawn into it. And, I asked her like out of 5, I was like, it's probably going to be a 2 or something, but she was pretty positive on it. So if Jules can sit through it, you know what that means. I feel like that's a pretty good sign that it can be for everyone. This movie won its awards, and I think it earned it. It definitely earned it. I don't have much else to say other than that. I was really, really fascinated by this film. Cameron, anything else you want to add? I know I keep derailing you in the middle.
No.
Yeah. Talk about it.
No, I'm glad that you really liked it, because I knew I had no I don't know. I kind of figured that you would like this movie, just in the way that it has broad appeal. It really does. But I would say, even if you are just a Marvel movie, watching Slub, a complete Neanderthal, as you said, I think I don't know a lot of Neanderthals, obviously, but I know people who just genuinely don't care about movies, who watch, who watch, like I said, Marvel movies once a year, who will watch like the Loki TV show and be like, yeah, that was great. I know a lot of people like that, and who also saw this movie and were blown away by it and loved it, and wanted to come back and were excited to talk about it. Wanted to come back and say like, oh, did you guys see Parasite? That's something that is. It's rare when that happens. It's rare when something like that sort of catches fire, and I think this movie definitely did that. So yeah, I would agree. It's for everybody. It deserves a lot of the hype that it gets, and I would say it's probably one of the best picture movies in the last, I don't know, or maybe one of the most deserving best picture movies in the last like 30 years. It's definitely up there. So
I mean, I don't mean to drag this on, but I was kind of confused. Like, are foreign movies allowed in the Oscars? Because are French films won? I never knew if they did.
I think there are only a handful of English non-language or non-English language movies that have won Oscars. Let me just look that up real quick.
Yeah, of course. I was kind of fascinated by that, but from the early moments of watching this movie, I was like, yeah, like this is claim. It deserves the award right away. It's high budget. It's beautiful. I don't know if it's high budget. It just feels high budget. It looks incredible. It's a genuine, like, I don't know. Like, I was just excited watching it, and I was happy to see it through. There's not a lot of movies that I can sit through and be like, I'm excited every moment all the way through this movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know.
Most of the time I'm like, oh, like it's surprising me, impressed me, Most of the time I'm like, don't waste my time, is how I feel about most films.
Right.
And this movie was nothing but kind of like just joy, I think everybody on set had a lot of, I don't know, like everybody seemed happy to be there when they were acting as well. They were so into the roles and stuff. So
no, that is true. And I think I don't know. I think you can tell that Bong Joon Ho is kind of having fun on his sets. You can tell that these movies are very, he's good at making them. I guess I'll say.
Yes.
So there are, I believe, 13 films that were nominated for Best Picture, and Parasite is the first that to win.
Yes, that's what I remember hearing, that it was like the first one.
But there were, I mean, since the 30s, there were movies that that have been nominated. So it isn't unprecedented necessarily, but it is the first to win Best Picture. I will say though, technically, The Artist, which is a silent film, is a French movie. Although it's a silent film, so it doesn't really count because it's not technically English language, but it did win Best Picture. So I just want to put it out there. It is technically a French movie. So
I don't know about silent movies. I don't know about that.
Well, we're gonna do a silent movie month at some point. So
But does that mean like no music at all or anything?
no, there's music. We've watched silent movies before.
No, I know. I wasn't too big on them. I'd love to see a silent movie that had like a synth soundtrack. You know what I mean? Like something that was just like really like not like that dumb carousel music that they always play in silent movies, you know? like, let's do something a little different than like that, you know? It's kind of hard for me to feel like I'm excited to watch a silent movie when it's like it brings me back to my old stupid job at the carousel. It's out of tune, you know? Oh man. Okay. Well, I think we've gone on for long enough, Cameron. It's been a pleasure this month. I've been excited. I feel like a lot of good energy with this podcast. I'm excited to go into October. Shout out to Darren O'Neill. I know he loves horror month, and I like good horror. I'm a very snobby horror appreciator.
I want his Rex. Darren, email us or send us a message.
Just text me, Darren.
Give me your Rex, because I have kind of a roadmap, but I don't have every movie that I'm thinking about. I think like I said, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun month.
Yeah, it will be good. I'm excited for it. Again, you can check us out, patreon.com/ECFS Productions. If you enjoy the show, we appreciate you just getting this far. You don't have to give us any money. You made it to the end of the episode. Come on. That's far enough. If you want to, you can. You don't have to.
What is more important than giving us money is giving us, well, not more important, but what is also important in addition to giving us money is subscribing to us on YouTube, commenting in the comment section, liking it. And I think we should we should always mention that we have a YouTube channel and we do post the videos on Wednesdays. So
okay, yeah, we'll try to shill it in there at the beginning. Let's add it to the script, Cameron. Believe it or not, this show has a script. It's basically one page of terrible notes that's not updated per episode. And it's just reminds us to say things, and half the time we forget it. So, yeah. Okay. Well, we post every Monday or maybe Tuesday. We haven't decided yet. Usually we post Monday. I'm going to keep trying to, but with my new work schedule, it might be better for Tuesday. We'll let you know on social media and Patreon and everything if we change it. We've been talking about it. Nobody has said anything to us that would be a bad thing. So what's new? Cameron and I might switch it to Tuesday. All right. You guys have a good one. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Cinema Spectator is an ECFS Productions podcast that is fully funded on patreon.com. Shout out to our producers, Darren O'Neill and Tim Smith, for supporting the show, and to the rest of you that support us at patreon.com/ECFS Productions. If you want to learn more about the benefits you can get, check out our Patreon. The show cannot happen without you great listeners, so we thank you for all your kindness and support.